Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? It's wonderful Friday, the end of the week here. We've arrived slightly ahead of the rest of the world, but we're doing great. I hope you've found a lot of information this week to be really helpful. If you're here for the first time, welcome. My name's Linda. I'm a trauma recovery coach and I've lived it as well. So, what are we going to do today? What are we going to look at? Oh, if you're here for the replay, press hashtag replay and always feel welcome to ask questions. I'm always happy to help because all this information is new and we are the first generation to have it, which is just wonderful. It makes my heart glad because we're able to change the generations that come after us. Okay, so for today, let's grab our infographic and here we go. So why? Why do we need to practice self-soothing? Okay, I want you to think about it from the perspective of our brain and our neurobiology. Okay, so in childhood, when we've experienced trauma, our brain developed differently to those who don't experience trauma in their younger years. And also, this can be passed down in our DNA if our mum had unresolved trauma as well. So the cortisol crosses the placenta, and scientists, and this is all really new stuff, scientists have discovered that when that extreme level of stress is in the mum, it actually affects, they can see how our DNA reads differently, okay? So when we trace it back, like in my family, the women have experienced trauma for at least 4 generations that I know of. Well, 3 generations and 4 on 4th. So it was obviously going on before then as well. So our vagus nerve, okay, we want to do work around there because that's where our fear response is programmed in the primitive part of our brain. And it hooks into our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And that's a big way of saying all the fibre optics that run through our body. And they're all connected, so not just to our brain, but to what we call our heart brain and our gut brain. And when we experience trauma, those two systems, instead of balancing each other out, we find it really hard to get that system to calm down. One of the things that, I'll go into that in a minute. So we want to be able to work with the ability to self-soothe in order that we gain, and not just an awareness, but the ability to help our body and our brain not just practice, but really absorb the ability to kick back into regulating and to calm, to have that ability to calm, which we didn't experience in childhood. And we can do that. We also want to do self-soothing techniques because as we've lived on hyper or hypoarousal all our life, our muscles are held so tightly that the ability to self-soothe can begin to reverse us holding on to our muscles like this. Now, one of the first places that we can notice that we're holding on really tightly is in a clenched jaw. Fortunately, I don't do that anymore, and I used to suffer really severe migraines, but that's not the case anymore. And we can use our breath work to learn to relax it the minute we notice that it's tight. But we also want to be able to let oxygen go through our body increasingly, because the more oxygen we have, the better we're able to breathe, the more well our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems will run as well. So it is really important stuff. That, and as we've been discussing this week, the outer critic, which is actually happening silently on the inside, by doing self-soothing techniques. It's Friday. I'm having trouble with English. Because the self-soothing techniques are going to help us become gentle and more compassionate with ourselves and therefore with others as well. And it's going to help us address that inner and outer critic, because we're going to notice when we're being harder on ourselves instead of kinder to ourselves. All right? So one of the first things that you can do is use essential oils. Now, lavender's a common one that's, I would say, well known. But if you combine lavender with chamomile, I used to have German chamomile, and marjoram, and you put 1 drop each under your nose, and that's if your skin's okay with it. I found that in the early days it was very good for helping me go to sleep as well. But then I used it if I was out, and these days you can get the little roller bottles. And they're about this big, they've got a rolly ball on them, and get pure essential oils, and even if you just dab it under there, helps calm everything down, and it's very soothing. You can feel it at a soul level that it becomes very soothing for us. So grab hold of them, put them in a carrier oil in a little bottle, and then it's very calming. All right? We need to use our conscious breathing, because as we use our conscious breathing, we begin to become aware of the areas where our muscles have been programmed just to hold on tight. One of the areas that I'm very conscious of is when I'm actually at the point now where they're actually quite loose, my hands. But if I'm holding my fists like this, like I could be out driving, and if I become aware that I'm holding my fist tight and I just relax it, I'm all relaxed because I've done some trauma-informed movement this morning. But if my fist is really super tight, then I'm aware that I need to go, okay, how am I feeling? What's happening for me? Etc., etc. Conscious breathing is more than just the breath. It's building an awareness of our body, and where next we want to be able to soothe and calm our body as well. And I read this, developing a witness state, and I went, that sounds interesting. What's that? And as I read it, I went, oh my goodness, that is so true. Now, the witness state is being able to say, it's like putting yourself to the side and becoming an observer of what's happening for you emotionally. And then being able to go, well, I'm an adult now and I can manage that. So remember, when we were little and our brain developed the fear response, it'll happen into adulthood, and we have to train ourselves to think, okay, I can see the fear responses happening. I want to breathe, I want to use my conscious breathing, but I also want to develop an awareness of what's happening for me and going, right, the witness state is I can recognise my thoughts, I can recognise emotions, I can say this is manageable, and then I'm going to sit down, and as I look at what's happening, I'm aware that I'm the adult. So it actually will bring us out of dissociation as well. I'm the adult and I can manage what's happening. So it's like looking at yourself from the outside in and saying, right, where do I need to go from here in order to manage what's happening? And using kindness as a really good tool to go, okay, let's work through this one step at a time, very gently and very kindly. Often when the overwhelm happened as children, there was no time to think because it was just so damn overwhelming. But what we can do now, being the adult, is we can make a sequence of choices that transform our lives. Okay, now this is really, really important, and it takes quite a considerable amount of time to develop. Don't use that as if you're anything like me, as the rebel going, oh, I'm going to do that overnight. It takes time to develop it because it comes from a deep heart level. So we want to develop that we are not responsible for others' emotions, because as children we took on the burden and it's heavy, all right? That adults had us believing that we are responsible for them. I certainly grew up into a state where I felt like I was responsible for everyone in my family. And, my brother used to do things like turn up and be unpacking into my home. He'd gone and got the key off another family member. No communication, just, oh, hi sis, I'm here and I'm staying. I'm like, Oh my goodness, this is really bizarre. So when we develop this awareness that we're not responsible for other people's emotions, it's not about pushing other people away. It's not about developing a boundary that's to keep them out, and that's not what boundaries are really about. It's developing a level of kindness in us that lets them have their own journey and lets them be responsible for how they're going to work things out. Okay? We can't do that for them. We don't have their mind, their thoughts. We don't have their perceptions of what life will be like. And it's really important that we develop that, because only then can we move into healthy relationships and be able to communicate of what's yours, what's mine, and let's work together as to where we're headed from here. But if we keep taking on if we keep taking on the responsibility, even if it's unconscious, for how other people feel, we'll never be free to be who I am and what my role in the world is, okay? It's heart level stuff. It's not mind, it's not changing a mindset, it's changing our heart set and being able to have compassion, because we actually are able to sit down and watch what other people are doing and see and anticipate what's going to happen from their choices, because we had to do that. We developed that as children in order that we would know when our parents were moving into their worst behaviour and to keep ourselves safe. So as we've become observers, we actually are able to use that as adults and say, okay, I can see that happening, and it depends on the level of relationship whether I can pose that as a question, say I can see this happening for you, what do you want to do about it? Or do I need to just focus on having the kindness and compassion and understanding that everyone's on their own journey? They are good questions to ask ourselves so that we stop getting caught up in other people's drama. Okay, there are people in the world who do work on their stuff, and we can walk side by side together. But give up the responsibility, because otherwise you feel weighted down, and it does make us unwell. All right. So another thing we can do is place our hand on our heart. All right. You want to feel your heartbeat, and you want to remember that here in this space of love, it's very life-giving. Okay. And when we remember that we have this incredible pool of love within us, we're then able to go, okay, I want to move through this life with love at the forefront of who I am and what I'm here to do. And it will help regulate our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, because we're remembering that our core is filled with deep abiding love. All right? And the art of self-compassion, well, I've really covered that, but the art of self-compassion is listening to our thoughts, feeling our feelings, noticing where we're limiting ourselves, unpacking the belief, and going, okay, I don't need that belief anymore. Okay, grab one of those only and work on it, all right? Just one thing, and create one awareness, one step, once a day around it, and then you're going to be able to keep transforming your life, moving forward in recovery, and enjoying the process as well along the way. Okay? Thanks for joining in. I love you all heaps. It's a privilege to come and share information with you. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll be back next week with another edition. And until then, blessings and dreams, and bye for now.